Robin.
That's what Osprey does.
Okay. Erin, you were amazing. Hi, I'm Robin. I'm an alcoholic. And thank you, Osprey, for asking me to speak tonight. It's always an honor. And gosh, I've just grown into, I just love Alcoholics Anonymous. I've fallen in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. I did not go to treatment. I got sober in AA, and I've continued to stay sober in AA one day at a time. I was an everyday drinker. I was a blackout drinker. And if I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about it. And that's how I lived my life for years until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's here that I learned and I found my solution to putting the drink down and staying stopped. And I'm forever grateful. Like for the steps that, sorry, I have, you know, as you get older, your hair falls out and it just lands in your lip gloss. I'm grateful for these steps that have changed my life. My sponsor, who continues to be my safe place, my higher power, whom I call God, who's the basis of my program, and opportunities to be of service like tonight. So thank you. When I first got sober, this wise woman said to me, Robin, you only need 3 things to get sober. She said, 1, you're going to need a sobriety date because that's your, that's going to be your sense of purpose. And 2, you're going to need a sponsor, whether that's me or another woman in Alcoholics Anonymous, because that's going to be your sense of direction. And 3, you're going to need a home group because that's your sense of belonging. So today, my sobriety date is 9/10/2002. My sponsor is Susan V, and my home group is the Millennium Group that meets on Wednesday nights in Kirkland at 7:30. So please come join us. We just had a New Year's Eve speaker and dance, and now we're going to do it annually. It was such a success. So it was really a lot of fun. So I grew up in Spokane, and I grew up in a very loving home. That's not the reason I'm an alcoholic today. And I had a great childhood. We had a lake place out at Newman Lake. I don't know if you're familiar with the east side that much, but it was wonderful. And I remember one time my folks said, I have an older sister, 2 years older than me, and they said, you girls can have friends out for the week. And we're like, yes, so fun. And so I had my friend out, Pam, and my parents always had an open bar every night. And so I thought it would be really fun to drink that night after everyone went to bed. And so I filled up a water bottle of my mom's Jim Beam. And I realized I wasn't paying a lot of attention to how she drank because she mixed it with 7-Up, and we did not. And yeah, so it was gross. But what I remember is that I ended up going outside and throwing up in the bushes all night long, and I blacked out, and I was sick for days. And then I was no longer able to have friends out after that. But that was kind of my precursor of how it was going to be for me drinking. And from there, I didn't keep drinking from 13 on, but like in high school, I did drink on the weekends. And I only dated guys that drank. We always drank before the dances and the movies and all those kinds of things. And my best friend, we always drank at her house because her mom and dad would let us drink. And so I spent a lot of time in high school over at her house. And then I started to have consequences for my drinking, like right away. I was a cheerleader, and I got kicked off the cheerleading squad for showing up to the basketball game drunk. And in my defense, I don't like basketball, and I thought it would just be a little bit more fun. It's, you know, just boring back and forth. And anyway, people didn't see it that way. So from there, I went on to WSU, and funny enough, I didn't drink a lot in college, but it was there that I started to feel like something is definitely missing in me. And I started to, like what we talk about, like not fit in your own skin. And so I did a lot of eating in college, I remember, but after 2 years, I was like, done. I'm not getting anywhere. And I decided to go back home, and I went back to Spokane. I got an apartment, and by the grace of God, I got this really great job at Dean Witter, which is Morgan Stanley today. And I worked there for 7 years, and my my hours were 6 to 2. It was like perfect drinking hours. Like, well, the morning was a little rough. Let's be honest, because I have to get up at 4:30. But I mean, I'm off at 2, and I can go back out to the lake in the summertime, and my dad will take me for a ski ride and have dinner with them, come back in, or I can clean my apartment and go work out, and then start drinking. And that's how I live my life. And we drank a lot after work, and we went to all these happy hours. And I remember one day I was coming home and I hit a parked car, and I wasn't in a blackout because I remember it, but I didn't know what to do, so I just drove down the street and parked my car outside of my apartment. I thought, I'm going to go to bed. I'll figure it out in the morning. But when I woke up to go out to my car at 5:30 because I had to work the next day, there was this note on my car. And it gave all the information of the car that I hit, and he had all my information. And so now I'm starting to have all these financial consequences, and ended up getting a rental car and going over to my folks' house for dinner one night during that time. I remember my dad saying, because he bought me my first car, it was a Pinto. And he said, "Where's your Pinto?" And I said, "You know what? I got hit by a drunk driver." So I'm like lying. So now I'm not being honest. And from then on, one day I was delivering stock to a bank in Spokane, and there was this guy out on the street corner who recognized, and it was like, oh my gosh, that's like my best friend from high school as far as like guys go, and he was holding up a happy hour sign, and he said, "You should come to my restaurant." And so I did, and long story short, we fell in love and we got engaged, and he decided he was going to go finish his degree over here at the U. And so he came back over to Seattle, and I was in Spokane. So he never really knew how much I was drinking. So I because I'm a good person, even though I'm a drunk person, I said, I thought he should know, right? That this is what you're marrying. And so I remember we were out for drinks, and we were having drinks and dinner, and I said the wedding was coming up pretty soon. And I said, I think I'm an alcoholic, and I think I have a problem with alcohol. And he said, "No." He said, "I don't think so." He said, "I think it's your mom." And I think I do too. And he said, "I think it's the wedding and all the pressure, And I'm like, well, okay, well, don't say I didn't warn you, So onward, and we got married, and had two beautiful little girls. Now they're two beautiful old girls, and I have 3 grandchildren. And we got married, and we went on a vacation to Maui, and it was a work family vacation. We took a week for family and a week for work, and we did family first. And when it came to the work vacation, I was really into the vacation part of it. And I did something that night that was my incomprehensible, demoralizing moment in my drinking. And I locked my children. They were very young. I locked them in the hotel room, and I said, I got them dinner, little chicken nuggets and a Disney movie. And I said, I'm going to be right back by the end of your movie, and whatever you do, don't answer the door. Just don't answer the door. And then I will be back when your movie is over. And I went down to the pool bar. And the next thing I know is I woke up, it was morning, and I'm full of scratches and blood and bumps on my head and bruises. And apparently I had fallen into bushes on my way back. And the thing that scared me the most, outside of that I would do that to my children, it just kind of gives me a lot of angst because of having 3 grandchildren now, and I can't imagine my daughter ever doing that. And in today's world, but there's a place in the doctor's opinion where it says these men were not drinking to escape; they were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. And that was me, because I drank that night, and because I couldn't not drink. And time went by, and it's New Year's Eve, and I'm still drinking, and it's time to take the babysitter home. We went out early because I'm not a huge New Year's Eve fan, and I don't like to be out on the roads because of people like me. And let's be honest. And I remember he was taking the babysitter home, and I thought I'm just going to have one more drink. And so I opened up the refrigerator, and my heart just sunk because there was just like this much wine in the wine bottle, and it was like what we read in the book, that jumping off point where I knew I couldn't live with it and I couldn't live without it. And the next day was New Year's Day, and I spent all day on the couch reading self-help books. It was back to self-help. And that week, my best friend from high school called me, and she said, I'm in town from Haley, Idaho. She goes, do you want to have lunch down at the pier? And I said, yeah, of course. So I go down to meet her. I haven't seen her in years. And like, we're sitting there, we're talking, and I'm like, she looked great. And I'm like, how are you? And she goes, I'm fantastic. She said, I'm 5 years sober and I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was like, no, and I was just floored. And so now I'm starting to ask her all these questions in the third person from my mom, and but really, I'm asking them all. I'm asking them all for me. And so we have a great lunch, and I go home that night, and the message was call AA. So I take out the phone book because I'm that old, and I took out the phone book and I looked up AA. And so if you work here on the hotline or Eastside Intergroup, you're saving lives, because it saved my life that night. And this lady sent me to this meeting in Bothell, and I went to this meeting. I lied to get out of the house. I remember that part. And it was raining and dark, and it was in Bothell. And I walked down these stairs. It was the bottom of the basement, like, most of our meetings. I don't know why we're always in the bottom of the basement. But anyway, so I walked down there, and it was a small group of women. They were older than me, and they were all had their big books on their laps, and they all knew each other. It was a little intimidating because they were all laughing, and but they were very welcoming. And the meeting went on. I didn't hear a word they said, not a word they said. And then towards the end, they started to they passed the basket, and I did something that night that saved my life. And I reached in there, and I took a schedule, and I didn't put any money in because I was a taker, not a giver at that time. And I took the schedule, I put it in my purse, and then the meeting was over. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I remember walking up the stairs and having them say, keep coming back. And I'm like, I'm so not coming back here. But you guys are doing good, And I left, and I went home, and the next morning I'm having my coffee, and God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And I reached in my purse, and I pulled out my the schedule, and I just picked, or God just picked, actually. And I went to that meeting, and then I went to a different meeting, and they sent me a different meeting, and then I started to find my people. And like, you guys are my people. Like, I don't know, I know 2 people in here. And I can go anywhere today, and those are my people. When I go on vacation, I go to meetings because I drink on vacation, and I find my people, and it gives me a lot of peace. But so then my husband comes home, and he says, we're moving to Belgium. And I'm like, I have 3 years of sobriety at this point. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. They have AA over there. And we moved to Belgium, and we lived in Brussels. Well, we lived in Waterloo, which is where Napoleon has the Butte de Lyon, the whole thing. That was very cool. Side note. But we lived over there, and we were expats. And so I went to an expat meeting where you have all these different people coming from different parts of the world, and they're trying to stay sober. And it was just not the AA I was used to. And so I kept going, and I kept going, and it was a small room, and it had little lacy curtains, and everyone smoked, and except me. And I started to look at the differences and not the similarities. And I started to not call my sponsor back in the States because she was 9 hours different, and it was just too hard. I had to get up too early or stay up too late. And then I contacted the women that I sponsor, and I said, I really think that it would be good for you to get someone that you can you can see and have coffee with and meet at meetings and, and so I let them go. And I call those my anchors. And so I just kept pulling up all my anchors. And then I planned my relapse. And I remember celebrating I had 5.5 years when that happened, but the way that went was, so I don't know. It's like, it's a relapse, but I mean, like when you plan something, it's like, okay, I mean, I don't know. So we went to, if I'm going to drink, I'm going to do it great. So we're going to go to my favorite restaurant. Every Friday night we had date night, and we went to this Italian restaurant there in Brussels, and it was so good. And I'd been watching him drink Belgian beers for like 2 years. And so I ordered one. And the minute that hit my lips, the obsession started again. I couldn't hear him. I don't remember. We went to a movie afterwards. I only had one drink. It's not that I was blacked out, but all I could think about was how I'm going to drink tomorrow. And that's the kind of alcoholic I am. And then shortly right after that, he said, well, we're moving back to the States. And I'm like, oh, crap. Because that's where I was sober, and that's where all my friends are. And now I'm drinking, and AA ruins your drinking. And so I got back home, and it was like you guys were popping up like all over the place, like in the grocery store, and I'm out on a run, and I was like, and here's Abby, this gal that I just loved. When I'm sober, I love her. But when I'm drinking, like, she's a thorn in my side because I keep seeing her everywhere I go. And I remember we went to this Mexican restaurant and we drank margaritas, and they were super strong, and that's why we went there. And afterwards we go next door is Blockbuster. That's how old this whole thing is, this whole story. And so I remember Abby was in Blockbuster, and I'm drunk and she's sober, and I'm trying to, those little aisles. I'm like trying to not see Abby. And oh my gosh, there's so much that goes into drinking and controlling. And so I'm so grateful I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that today. But so then my husband says, we're going to move back up we're moving again to Seattle. So I end up, while I'm down there, I end up scraping. I would get together like 30 days, 60 days. I'd get 90 days, and then I would drink again. Or he'd say, it's Thanksgiving, do you want wine? And I'm like, okay. Because I had no defense, and against that first drink. And so I ended up scraping together a year, and I got a sponsor down there. And when we moved up, I thought, okay, I know what to do. So I got to get a sponsor. I got to get a home group. I got to do all these things. And so I went to this ladies, the first 7 years of my sobriety, I did only women's meetings. And so I went to this Bellevue 10 a.m. women's meeting. And there was this woman, every time she shared, like my heart would just pound. And I'm like, she's my sponsor. I know she is, So I asked her after the meeting, would you be my sponsor? And she said, let's go for coffee. And I'm like, I thought you're supposed to say yes to all these 8 requests. And I'm like, okay. So, and what's funny about that now is like, that's what I say when people ask me, because it's, it's bigger than just that. So anyway, we went to Applebee's and we had breakfast, and I told her my story, and I told her, my marriage was starting to fail, and I just kept putting my husband up above my sobriety. And that's one thing I do not do today. My sobriety is number one in my life, and everything else comes below it. But so we get out to the parking lot, and I said, okay, I'm going to try this one more time. And so I asked her if she'd be my sponsor again. And she said, are you willing to go to any lengths? And I'm like, God, would you just say yes? And I'm like, but when she said that to me, I'd said it to other women, and I had this moment of clarity, and everything that I had learned up here fell to my heart. And I said yes. And she said, Robin, she said, it may mean the end of your marriage at some point. And I said, okay. And I walked back to my car, but as I'm walking back to my car, I'm thinking to myself, God's tapping me on the shoulder saying, Robin, you're responsible for your recovery. You're responsible for your life and for this disease, And so life went on, and I had about 7 years of sobriety, and life was good. My marriage wasn't the best, but we're kind of staying together, and I was sponsoring, and you can work a really strong program and have life happen. And that's what happened. He came into the kitchen and he said one day, I really want to be with someone who I can share a bottle of wine with. And I said, and this is a man that I've known since 7th grade. And I said, there's only 2 things I won't do for you. 1, I won't take another drink for you. And 2, I won't give up my relationship with God for you. And so our 25-year marriage dissolved. And then he said to me, you need to get someone in your camp. And I'm not a camper. So he met an attorney, and he had a weird way of talking. And so I got an attorney, and I remember going to that appointment, and I got to the appointment, and I couldn't get out of the car. And so I thought, I'll call my sponsor. And my sponsor, she does not take personal calls during her business hours. And it's part of her job. So I knew that she wasn't going to pick up, but I'm just doing what I'm told. And so I called her, and she picked up. And I'm like, oh my God. I said, I can't get out of the car. And she said, Robin, I just want you to open your driver's side door. And I want you to put your foot on the floor. And now I want you to put your other foot on the floor. And I want you to grab your purse, and I want you to go into that appointment as a clean and sober woman of Alcoholics Anonymous that has a relationship with God. And we can do this. And we did it. And we keep doing things, And so I'm so grateful for her, because like my life, it doesn't look the same as it used to, but it's so many things have been restored in a different way that I would have never restored it that way, but God has. And so when I think about the steps, in the first step, being powerless over alcohol and life being unmanageable, I found that very empowering when I took that step. And my very first sponsor said, okay, well, my very first sponsor, it's not true. My very first sponsor called me when she was sober for 5 years, and she told me that she wasn't an alcoholic anymore. And so that really scared me. So this disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful. And I know that for sure. And, but anyway, my other sponsor said, write down your 5 worst drunks. And so I did. And, but I wrote down 15 because the pen just kept going. And then in step 2, I love the being restored to sanity. That gives me the picture of wholeness, because insanity is fragmented and broken. And I had this grand sponsor in San Jose when I lived in California, and she had a meeting at her house every week, and I went to it, and I don't know, I gave her a birthday card or something, and I was hugging her, and when I was leaving, saying thank you, and then she pulled me aside and she said, Robin, she said, you breathe really shallow. And she said, I want you to take deep breaths. You deserve to take up space. And when you wrote on your card, as lovely as that was, she said, your writing is really small. She said, I want you to write really big, because you deserve to take up space. And so today I write really big, and I breathe really deep, except for when I'm speaking, And so it's like those things just stick in my mind as huge, I don't know, huge gifts, I guess you would say. And in step 3, turning my will and my life over to the care of God. When I drink, alcohol is my God, so there's no chance of even doing that. And in step 4, I choose to feed my courage and not my fears. Go ahead and do the step work. And in 5, I'm not a secret today, and I've had a couple of sponsors just for moving and things like that. And I have not been a secret with any of them, and that has saved me. And that one alcoholic talking to another is the cornerstone, I think, of my program. And 6, like the character defects, people say I didn't get sober to be miserable, and that's me too. And I feel like I should move this back. In 7, it's a continuing of growing closer to God, and letting him have all of me, the good and the bad. And in 8, I think it's I find that to be a very prayerful step, because I'm praying for myself for the right amends, and praying for the other person to accept it. And I think it's what they say, it's the end of isolation. I like that. So the ninth step is one of my favorites, the third and the ninth. But the ninth step, so my ex-husband has remarried, and so I want to make an amends. I tried to make an amends early on in the whole sobriety process, and it was it was a total bust. And I don't think he was like, wow, I'm kind of glad I divorced you. Like, I don't think he knew. I don't think he knew what I was saying. I didn't know what I was saying. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta work on this. So, so anyway, he's a married man now, and I treat him. I have respect for that sanctity of marriage, and so I don't text him or call him or anything like that. And but I knew that the first amends that I did with him did not work, and so but I knew that he was one of the closest people in my life, and I knew I can't just let that go. So my sponsor said, Robin, I want you to do the prayer on page 552, and so I read 552, and I started praying that for him, that he'd have all these wonderful things in his life that I want. And it's like a 2-week, it says do it for every day for 2 weeks. Well, okay, the problem with that is that I don't ever see him. And so my prayer was that he would need to be by himself, right? Because she's sort of like a fly on fly paper, and so they're always together. And so I'm like, okay, I can't do that with her there. So he is going to have to be by himself. And so I prayed for that. Years went by. And so that's why I know that the ninth step is a divine appointment with God. And we're at SeaTac, and my daughter's moving to Hawaii. They were in the military, and so we had to take 2 cars. They've got 2 dogs and all this crap, when you're big and making a big move. And so we get them all off on their way, bye-bye. And we're walking out of SeaTac, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's alone. This is my moment. I wasn't ready, but and I don't even know if it's there, because SeaTac is such a busy place. But there's like there's a little cove there. I don't know where it is. But God made it. And I said, do you have a minute? And he said, sure. And so we kind of just stepped into this little cove, and I made my amends, and I told him that I take 50%, not more. I take 50% of our marriage not working out, and that I love him as the father of my children, and that I want nothing but the best for him. I said, I want you to be happy, and I want you to be healthy, and I want you to have joy in your life, and I want you to be successful, and I want you to have peace. And he started crying. And then I started crying. And then he said, I want that for you too. And then we hugged, and we both walked out of SeaTac. We went different ways. And I felt this huge wash of just freedom, because finally, like, my heart was free. And that's what I've gotten from this program. At the Alano Club on the East Side, they have the sign "Hope" is in front. And I love going to that meeting just because that's the first thing I got here was hope. And the second thing I got was freedom. And I'm forever grateful. And I could go on and on, but I do have to say that I have a couple more. I'll go really fast. My favorite part in the book is once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we are in a short time as bad as ever. If we are planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol. And today I keep my sobriety really simple. I go to meetings. I don't drink in between. I call my sponsor. I do the steps. I do the, as everyone says, do the deal. You're doing the deal? I'm like, I'm doing the deal. And the return I've gotten is huge. And God, for me, like I was in this meeting the other day, and they were talking about obsessing, when we have that obsession, and then if you ever obsess about something, and my sponsor has me writing at the end of my 10th step about that. And are you obsessing on something today? And I was, and I had been, it was the same thing. And And then I heard this podcast and it said, if you're having an obsessing thought, then replace it with God's truth. And for me, that just seemed to be the answer. And God seems to be the answer for all of my problems today. But there's 3 quotes that I really like, and I'm just going to read them as I end. And it's called, first one is, lasting transformation doesn't happen in isolation, and there is no healing without helping. God is not afraid of the dark. And my 2 most important words that I like and that I live by today are, but God. So that's all I got. Thank you.